Welcome to the Online Course Creator Show. I'm your host, Lou Blakely. This is episode 79, and today I'm diving into a topic that comes up all of the time, which is around pricing. So pricing your online course or digital product or whatever it is that you're putting out there is something that can really stop you from moving forward if you can't make a decision on what the price is going to be. It also can impact the success that you have with the actual launching and selling of your online course, because if it's not priced right, then it can actually stop you getting sales as well. So today I'm going to dive into this topic, and I really hope that what I'm going to share with you is going to help you in some way. Now, before I get started, I want to share with you a little deal that I've made with myself. So you may have noticed, if you're listening regularly, that usually I have a podcast come out once a week, right? And the last 2 weeks, there hasn't been one. So what I'm finding, and maybe you resonate with this, I don't know, that I really get in the mode of recording podcasts and getting them out there, and I love batching them and making sure that I've got like a backlog set up. That is my ideal situation, something I've spoken about before, and I really, really, really love the feeling of being in that situation. But what I'm finding happens is that all goes to plan for a while, and then something comes up, or multiple things, just life gets really busy, which is where I've been really in the last couple of weeks. And I've got myself in a situation where I don't have a backlog of episodes, and I'm, missed 2 weeks. So to keep myself accountable, I have made a little deal with myself now that if I miss a weekly episode, then the following week, or even the following week after that, depending on when I get caught up again, I actually have to fill in all the missing weeks by still recording episodes for that week and maybe just releasing them later. Now, this is something that I'm trying to keep myself accountable and actually help me or my brain shift into that mode of it's actually easier just to get it done week by week rather than waiting until I'm in that situation. So what this means for you is that this week there's going to be 3 episodes come out because I'm playing catch up. So today is the regular Wednesday podcast episode, and then later in the week I'm going to drop 2 more. So that is for me, it just seems to be working for my brain already. That kind of accountability is hopefully going to make me become more reliably consistent at getting out a weekly episode. This has definitely been a journey for me. If you've been listening for a while, you may have heard me talk about consistency and how I struggled with it after having a really bad bout of burnout and actually coming back from that and kind of relearning how to be consistent again. And there is a lot to be said for consistency. I know that Kirsten Morrison spoke a lot about consistency in her episode around human design, which was quite a while ago now. But for me, yes, consistency is not the be-all and end-all, but there's no doubt that it works, right? I notice my podcast grows significantly when I'm consistent. It's the same on social media. It's the same with sticking to when you're going to do your launches, right? I do believe that consistency is really something that is going to benefit you and your business so much. It benefits our businesses, but it also benefits our audience, right? Because when you know that someone's going to show up and deliver whatever they say they're going to deliver week on week, then they're more trustworthy, right? So there's so many side things to consistency. And I believe becoming consistent is something that is very much a great investment of our time, which is why I'm setting this little deal with myself. So maybe you relate to that, but that's why you are going to see a few episodes coming out over the coming days. On that topic, what are we in now? So we're in August now. So July was the biggest month in terms of downloads I have ever had on this podcast. So if you are out there sharing this podcast with your friends, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for being here. And also, I did drop more episodes in July than I normally would. And again, I guess that's testament to the fact that showing up consistently definitely works. So all of that to say, just had my biggest month with the podcast. I absolutely love doing this podcast. I am totally committed to it. And I love all the messages that I get from you about how much you're enjoying the content as well. So keep them coming. If you love something about a particular episode or you just like the podcast in general, then I love to hear about it. So don't be shy about sharing that with me as well. Now, let's get back onto today's topic, which is all about pricing. And this is something that I always work with my customers and clients, because pricing comes up for everyone. And yeah, so there is ways that I help you with pricing within all of my programs. So today I'm going to be sharing some general tips on pricing by sharing do's and don'ts when it comes to pricing your online course. I do think that pricing can be quite a contentious subject because there is a ton of people out there telling you to charge what you're worth, which is a great message. And while we're all about that here on this show, I want to remind you that when you're pricing an online course, you're effectively pricing a product. You are not pricing yourself or your worth. So it is all about the market, your target audience, and what people are prepared to buy. So we're not associating our worth with the price of the course at all, because in that context, you could create like a simple checklist or something like that that would normally be like a $37 digital product and be like, well, I'm worth so much more than this, so I'm going to put a price tag of $3,000 on it. Like, you can see where that theory of charging what you're worth falls over. Okay, so yes, we truly believe in self-belief and self-worth, but pricing your online course is actually a business decision, and we have to charge accordingly to what the product is actually worth to the buyer. And the buyer has to feel that the payoff or what they're getting in exchange for their money is actually worth it for them in order for them to purchase. And that is simply how the free market works. I'd also like to add that pricing is very nuanced. So what might apply to one person will not necessarily apply to the next person. So I do recommend that if you want help with pricing, then getting a launch strategist like myself to help you is probably the best way to go about it. However, today I'm going to do my best to give you some more general do's and don'ts, and maybe some will apply to you and some won't, because as I mentioned, everyone's situation is slightly different, but there are some general rules and recommendations and things to avoid as well, which I am covering in today's episode. So I'm going to dive into it firstly by sharing the do's. So the do's and don'ts, I feel like that's a good title, but when it comes to actually saying the do's, it sounds a little bit funny. But anyway, here we go. So the first do is to understand that the bigger the transformation that you're offering inside of your course, and that therefore will supply the customer with the biggest return on investment, the higher price you can charge. That's what it comes down to in a nutshell. So that's a general rule of thumb. So if you're selling a program that's going to help people go through like a large journey that's going to give them a big payoff at the end, then the price is going to be higher than if you are helping them solve a tiny little micro problem. Okay, so that's a general rule of thumb in terms of how much you should be charging. The bigger the transformation, the more you can charge. Now, the second do is to really consider who your target audience is. Are they, and one thing within this is I want you to consider if you have a business audience or a consumer market audience. Like, are you selling to other businesses or are you selling to someone like business to consumer? So just someone that maybe works a 9 to 5 and they're wanting to purchase a lifestyle product, for example. This will also help you find the right price fit, because again, it's about finding that right price fit between what we're offering and what the person is willing to pay. So another general rule of thumb, and again, this is not going to apply to everyone, but generally if you are selling to businesses, you can afford to price higher because businesses are usually more willing to invest because of the payoff, the transformation. Again, they can write it off on their tax, all of that good stuff. Whereas if you are selling to a consumer market, they are more looking at it from a similar viewpoint to buying some clothes or something like that. Like, sure, the investment can pay off for them, but generally it will be lower price. Now, this is not always the case, but that is also something to consider. So you might actually see people selling similar sized courses to you who are in the business space and they're charging like tens of thousands of dollars. It's actually pretty unlikely that you'll get the same kind of, or you will find that people in the consumer market are not willing to spend that kind of money. So definitely something to keep in mind. Now, another do when it comes to pricing is to make sure that anything that requires you to give individual feedback and to actually look at the work or whatever that someone is producing inside of a course, if you are providing that kind of service, then this requires a much higher price point because you are exchanging your time for money. And at this point, we are in the realm of actually having to give up our time based on how many people sign up to a program. So if you've got 20 people that sign up to a program, for example, and you've promised an hour of your time to each of them to actually, maybe you're auditing something that they put together as a result of the course, then you actually need to then put aside 20 hours of your time. Okay, so you need to be making sure that the price reflects that and you're not just adding that stuff in as a bonus, thinking that that's going to make people buy, and then you have to then deliver on it and you're going to lose all of this time. Okay, once you're in this realm of adding these kind of features, you are moving from an online course to a group coaching program, because an online course would never deliver that kind of time investment from you. So just be very, very clear on what it is you're actually offering between like a signature online course and a group coaching program. There is a difference, and I have spoken about that in multiple episodes. So that would be when you're moving from like that kind of online course situation into a group coaching situation, and the price needs to be at a much higher price point to reflect the kind of services, because ultimately that is starting to become a service that you're offering. You need to be reflecting that in your price. So the do is to price it according to how much you are delivering. Now, this may seem kind of obvious, but I feel like I do see a lot of people looking at their offers and thinking, how can I make them more of a no-brainer? And then all of a sudden they've added on all this like one-on-one time that's actually not going to make the person purchase and is actually going to take up a lot of your time that you're essentially not getting paid for. So we just need to be very aware of what extra bells and whistles we are adding in. Another do of pricing is to understand that the price you can command for your online course or digital product ties in directly with how good you are at communicating the value and the transformation that is possible with your audience in that process of selling it. And this is essentially the marketing part. Okay, so you are going to be able to charge a higher price based on how good you get at the marketing. And that's why sometimes I will encourage you to actually start off with a lower price while you upskill in the area of actually being able to communicate and market your offer. Now, another do is, and this is something that some people may disagree with, but I do believe that you should look at what other courses in the market are selling at, looking at their offers broken down, exactly what they're offering, who you believe is doing really well at this, and maybe there's some people in your niche who aren't doing that well from what you can tell. And of course, we never know that for sure. But I want you to just look at this and take it as information in and not get caught up on it, okay? So we're looking at it, but we're not worrying too much about it. I want you to price according to what your offer is, not there. And I don't want you to say, well, I'm just going to come in just slightly lower, because that's not really the thing that's going to sell your offer at all, right? So we want to look at and just be aware of what is happening out there in our market, but we don't want to obsess about it. Now, the last do is to land on something that feels like it is right for your market based on the research that you've done, and roll with it. I don't want you to overthink it at this point, because it can hold you up, frankly, for years, and then all of a sudden you've never released the product, you've never launched it because you're still wondering that or fearing that you might get the price wrong. Okay, so usually what happens is someone lands on a price, but then it can feel a little bit low for you, like you should be charging more, because remember, you should be charging what you're worth. But there's still an inkling that you're not really sure if people will pay that as well. So while you think it's not high enough, maybe you feel like you're giving away too much information. But yet on the flip side of that, you're not sure if people will really buy that, because you haven't actually validated the course yet, because you haven't launched it. Then I do recommend you just go with that price for now, because you can validate your course by getting that price that you've come up with. And once you know that, you can move forward with confidence. And it is always going to be easier to increase the price later on than it is to price too high at the start and then have to figure out that is the factor that's stopping people from buying and having to drop the price. We don't want to be in that situation. Okay, so it's always easier to start with where you're at a price that maybe it feels slightly too low for you, but you're still not sure whether people will pay it. Go with that price now, and then you can always increase it once you know people are definitely willing to pay that price. And don't forget that over time, our online course gets better. We can add more things, just like more training based on the feedback that we get from our students. Online courses do improve over time, and it is really normal for pricing to go up over time for online courses. So start where you're at right now. Don't dwell on the decision. Get moving. Choose the price. Get some customers in, and then you can increase later. Now, with all that in mind, I'm going to move into the what not to do or the don'ts. So one thing I really want you to avoid is pricing low in the hope that more people will buy. This absolutely does not work, and it doesn't happen the way we think it does. Like, people don't just buy a course because it's cheap. Okay, it's just as much work to sell a low-cost course as it is a higher-priced one, because there has to be a true exchange, a true value exchange, regardless of the price. But also, like I said before, it comes down to how good you are at actually communicating the value in your marketing and making it very clear to people what the outcome's going to be, what the transformation is going to be. And then they decide as consumers if it's worth the value of the course or worth the price. So when the value that they're going to gain outweighs the price, that is when people buy. So that is actually irrelevant to that equation. It's actually irrelevant, the price point, right? So don't think that you can just chuck a really cheap price on like a course that's actually providing a huge transformation and you're instantly going to get sales, because it absolutely does not work like that. So that's something I want you to avoid. I also see this sometimes with people pricing like online courses. Actually, this is my next one. I'm just looking at my notes here. So another thing I see related to this is pricing an online course. For example's sake, let's say that it's a 6-module, 6-week course, and you want to get heaps of sales for it. So you think pricing it more at a digital product price, like under $100 or under $200, is going to mean that people buy it. They absolutely won't. I love the saying that says the transformation is in the transaction. When people pay, they pay attention, they show up. People actually want to pay because it gives them accountability to actually show up and do the work. And if you're offering a 6-week course, that is a commitment for them, right? If they just spent pennies on this course, they're not going to show up and actually do the work when they've paid like $50 for it, because that's nothing to most people. It's not enough of an expense to mean that they're going to show up and do the work. So the message around this is just do not think that a low price is going to be enough to sell the course, because it absolutely is not. Now, another don't is to look at your competitors and price just a little bit under, and maybe throw in a few more extra things into the offer so that it seems like a really good deal. Because here's the thing, people that are in your audience aren't as familiar or as aware of your competitors as you are. So they don't know that that person is charging that much like you do, okay? And again, having a lower price is not the thing that's going to get you sales. It's actually that whole making sure that the exchange is worth it for the customer and being able to communicate the outcome and the transformation well in your marketing. So another thing to bear in mind is that people are prepared to pay for the person that they want to work with, even if that's more than the next person, right? Because they may have built a rapport with that person, they may trust them more, they may just simply like them more, and that person that they actually want to work with could very well be you, not your competitor. So while I said in the do's to be aware of what people are charging, I don't want you to charge based on what they're charging. I want you to charge based on what your offer actually is. So that's just a reminder about that one as well. Another don't is to price based on the scarcity thought that people in your audience aren't going to spend that kind of money, because I guarantee you there is a segment of your audience who are actually going or see the value in investing. So don't let scarcity come into the pricing equation and think that you have to drop the price because there's so many people in your audience who have commented, or you see people online. Like, actually, there's so many ways we can get in the scarcity loop, right? So don't let your pricing decisions being driven by scarcity or you deciding or projecting that other people aren't willing to invest, because at the end of the day, it is just a projection and basically you're making it up. And we don't want to do that. Now, the next don't is to look at how many hours you're going to spend to create the course and then calculate your hourly rate based on what you would earn, maybe providing a service, and then figure out how many people you want in your first launch, then price accordingly. I have seen a certain situation where this has been the logic behind pricing, and funnily enough, this person was an accountant. So I think that says a lot. This is not how to price an online course. Like, I do understand the theory behind wanting to do this, but online courses are not like exchanging time for money, like an hour to hour exchange, and you're only going to do that hour of work if you're going to get compensated for it. What we are creating here is more like a product that it doesn't matter how many you sell, the amount of work required or resources required from you is the same. So instead of pricing like that, I want you to understand that the very first time you launch a course, you're going to be putting a lot more time into it, proportionally more than you are in subsequent launches. And it's actually in the later launches. So say we're looking at a year situation here. If you're looking at that exchange in your first launch, then how are you going to calculate it in your second, third, and fourth launch? The reality is that you're going to spend a lot less time in those subsequent launches, but you're probably going to get more benefit in terms of profit as your business grows. So the real wins and the real profit is actually made after that first course, which is quite time intensive of creating the course, creating all the marketing material for the first time. And again, another reminder that you're not using this type of model to price. What you are using is using your target audience and what they're willing to pay for the transaction, the value exchange, okay? And you may be thinking, Lou, you keep saying that, but this is how you price an online course, right? You're not pricing using other models. It is about finding the sweet spot for what people are willing to pay for the transformation that you're offering. And a lot of that comes down to your ability to be able to communicate that in your marketing. And you may have heard that saying that online course success is 80% marketing, 20% how good your product is, and that is 100% accurate. Okay, so really the skill that you need to really focus on is marketing your product, and the more success you are going to see from it. Now, another don't when it comes to pricing is to price your group coaching or your signature online course close to the price point that people could pay to outsource it and get them to do the work for them. Okay, so when we are doing group coaching, we're basically selling a done with you model. And when we are selling an online course, we are selling a DIY situation. Like, we are the teacher and the person on the other side is doing it themselves. So it's DIY, right? Usually people are choosing this option because for whatever reason they don't have the resources to actually just pay an expert to do it for them. So I'm not talking about like hiring a really cheap VA that doesn't have the skills. I'm talking about hiring a skilled expert to do it for them. Now, an example I want to use for this is maybe you're creating a course about how to create a website on WordPress. So let's use that one as an example. Yes, you are offering a transformation that is going to have a payoff if it's taught well and you actually know what you're doing. Then the transformation is going to be a website that then helps someone grow their business, which is great. However, you then can't go and price this at like $5,000 because they could actually hire a skilled WordPress designer or developer to create a website for around $5,000. So it makes no logical sense for people to sign up to your course where they're going to have to do all the work themselves and DIY when they can spend the same amount of money or a similar amount of money to go and hire someone to do it all for them, and they don't literally have to learn anything. They don't have to think about it. They just outsource it. Okay, so make sure if you are offering a product in an area where they could hire a skilled expert just to do it for them, that your price for teaching and getting them to do it themselves is at a anchor point that is quite different from them being able to outsource it. Hopefully that makes sense. But if the price between the two is not much, I know which one I would pick, and that would be to get someone to do it for me if they knew what they were doing. Okay, so if you relate to that situation at all, then just be clear on that. Now, another example could be like interior, like decorating your own home, or maybe like renovating, that kind of thing. I'm going to spend a certain amount on learning that only if it makes financial sense compared to me just getting an expert to come and do it all. Okay, I'm only really looking at the course option if the option of getting an expert in to take care of everything for me is actually out of my price range. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, another don't. I feel like there's a lot of don'ts with pricing. Pricing can trip you up, right? So that's why sometimes it is worth just getting the expert help to look at your individual situation and being able to price quickly, because I know that I can look at every offer and I can tell you what to price it at within 20 minutes, right? So sometimes it's worth just getting the right people to help you, because there is a lot of don'ts. But on to the next don't. So I don't want you to offer an online course for the price of a digital product. I did touch on this earlier in one of the other ones. And a general rule of thumb is if you have modules and lessons within those modules, you are out of the digital product realm and you are into an online course, and the price should reflect that. You should be at least $199 if you are coming out of that. Like a digital product is something like a downloadable, a checklist, a short little micro training or something like that, okay? A online course is something that is a much bigger process, and you have modules and lessons in order to organize it correctly so that people can actually follow it. So make sure that you're pricing accordingly. I do see this one quite a lot where, and I mentioned it before, where people are selling like 6 module courses at the price of a digital product. That is actually going to hurt you so much, because people look at that and they think that's so cheap, there must be something wrong with it. Okay, so that's another thing that we want to consider. And on that topic, another don't is to think that you're doing people a favour by offering something for a way cheaper price than what it's actually worth, like what the transformation is worth to them. Because perception is really important. You're actually going to lose people who did value what you have to offer, but saw the price and thought that it must not be very good for you to be offering it at that price. Secondly, I love that phrase, and I spoke about this before, the transformation is in the transaction. I know that when I pay money, I am going to show up. And the more I pay, the more I'm going to show up. But there's so many digital products and low-cost offers that I've literally never opened because I just didn't actually pay enough for them. So people pay, they pay attention, they show up to do the work because they've paid for it, and these are actually the people that get the results. So by pricing lower than you should be, you are not only doing yourself a disservice by not charging what you need as a business to succeed, but you are doing your potential customers who then don't buy for you a disservice. Or maybe they do buy for you, but it's not enough of a transaction for them to pay attention. I totally understand that you want to help a lot of people. I think that people that are attracted to the online course industry are natural teachers, a lot of you, and you love to help people. Like, we are the helpers, right? But we also sometimes are doing a massive disservice to ourselves and to our customers by not pricing accordingly. You are not actually doing anyone a favour by offering something for way less than what it's worth or what makes financial business sense for you. Like, you are running a business here. You are not running a not-for-profit, okay? And we can help so many people through free content. I'm a really big fan of having a well-defined offer suite in your business, and that usually means having some kind of free content that can serve people on some level. And for me, that is this podcast. It could be your social media. You could be sending out a newsletter regularly. Like, these things are free normally, and you can provide value to the people that you want to help but can't afford it, but then have the offers and ways to help people at the price point that makes sense to them. And you can have many of them if you want in your business, or you could just focus on having one product as well. So the main takeaway that I hope you get from this podcast is that there is a lot to be said for the way that you can convey and communicate the value of the transformation and the outcomes that you are offering with your online course versus simply just slapping a price on it. So the better you can get at marketing and communicating the value of your course, the more success you're going to have. And actually, the more the pricing of your course is going to become irrelevant in the decision-making process of your buyers. So I hope you enjoyed that episode today, that rundown of pricing. I do find pricing in general, like this in a podcast where there's going to be multiple people listening to it in multiple different situations, it is quite a difficult topic to talk about in a way that's going to relate to everybody. And sometimes you may just need some advice, some help to actually know how to price your offer based on exactly what you're offering. And if that's you, reach out to me. There are ways that I can help you. But yeah, getting your price right can make or break your product, and it has a big impact. But I also, sometimes you've just got to roll with what you've got. And hopefully listening to these do's and don'ts has helped you get clearer on whether you're on the right path or not. And yeah, I've been meaning to do a podcast on pricing for a while because it is probably one of the things I get asked about the most, but it's not always cut and dry. Now, before we head off, I want to let you know that I'm going to be doing an amazing, amazing promotion on my Moneymakers program, which is going to be coming out very soon. And it is only going to be communicated with and shared with the waitlist for this particular program. So if you want to see this offer, it's going to be coming out early September. I highly, highly recommend that you jump onto the Moneymakers waitlist, which you can find at loublakely.com/waitlist. And yeah, if you're on there, you will be in the know about what the offer's going to be and how you can get involved, because it is like a once in a lifetime opportunity that is coming early September. So get on that waitlist. That is loublakely.com/waitlist. I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much again for listening to this podcast. I'd love to have you here. And watch out for those further episodes later this week as well. Bye for now. Thanks, course creators and go-getters. You're incredible, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit subscribe in your podcast app so you don't miss an episode. If you'd like to find out more about what I offer, head across to loublakely.com. See you next time.